So in today's video, basically, I started my new project, which is the Prairie Bloom towels. This is basically the second video because I'm warping, so I'm starting to do the warp. So what I ended up doing, so if you look at the Prairie Bloom towels, this is from Handwoven, May, June 2023, okay, on page 45, basically, if you're interested in this particular one. Now, as you know, I always take what Handwoven has or any pattern and I translate it for myself in a way that I will not screw up, because I have a very hard time when I'm warping or when I'm threading or anything like that to do these repeats. I'll forget to do these repeats. So I literally copy everything out exactly the way I would actually do it, and I just literally follow it line by line. So these are the towels here, okay, that you're looking at. I decided to change up the colors. I'm using natural for the background. I'm going to use jeans, and these are all Maurice Broussard. I'm going to use jeans, I'm using gris foncé, I'm using stone, and I'm using plum. So we'll see, I mean, obviously the look, I'm doing 2 sets of towels. At least that's the warp that I planned. I'm doing it on the sectional. I used my tension box again. If you looked at the Call of the Crow towels that I did, those videos with the tension box, you'll notice that I was a little bit short on the last towel. So we'll see whether or not this one works out better or not. We'll have to see. So I took basically all that information, I rewrote it for myself here, okay, you know, your heddle count sets and all that kind of stuff. Then I got to the threading. So the threading, it's basically a multicolor threading, okay. Now if you're going to use a warping board and manually, excuse me, manually do it, that's not a big issue. So what I did is I did the whole threading sequence with all the different repeats and so forth, okay? And so, and then I basically, for my section, because it's an EPI of 18, I counted basically 18 threads. And so this will go on to section 1. This will go on to section 2 of my sectional, section 3, section 3 of my sectional, and so on, all the way down to 18. So based on that, I could see that certain sections were all the same color, which was very easy to do. So what I ended up doing is I ended up using my tension box. I was able to buy secondhand a very old electric winder to wind some spools onto my spool rack, and then basically thread the different sections that said basically all natural. So section 1, section 5, all the way up to, I think it was like section 17 or something like that for me. Yeah, section 17 basically was all natural. So I did that, so one, and then the other ones left over, which were 2, 3, 4, and then towards the end there were some colors at the end there, 4, 18, 19, 20, and the last one was, no, 21 was all natural as well, but there was only 15 threads in the last section there, okay? So I've already warped all the threads for the all natural, so that's great. Don't have to worry about that. The question was, how to use a tension box with multicolors. That is something that's a work in progress for me to figure out. I chickened out and I decided I'm just going to do it manually because it's a lot easier than me trying to figure out, okay, how many spools do I need, because I could potentially need, even though it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections, I'm going to need more than 6 spools because I've got different, you know, different colors and stuff like that. So, and again, I would need 18 EPI, right? So I would need my 18 spools, possibly more so, considering the extra colors I've got. So I thought, you know what? It's not a lot of sections. I'm just going to quickly do it on the warping board, and I'll show you how I do it on the warping board quickly. And then we're going to try and figure out how to do it using a tension box. I'm not going to use a tension box, but how would I calculate it on the tension box so that it works out that way, because there's, you know, you can do it graphing wise, okay, in case some of you wanted to try it, all right? So very quickly for myself, I looked at, you know, for the tension box, one color, what were the sections I needed, okay, and I wrote those out. Then I went back and I looked at each section, and what I do basically is I like to color coordinate, you know, like I highlight when I do my stuff. If it's a different color, I like to highlight it, so that way when I'm actually threading, I know that this should be a plum thread, for example. Down here, this should be a gris foncé because, of course, I identify which, the highlighted colors, what they are when I actually do my stuff, right? So it makes it very easy for me to follow along. I don't have to worry about that. So in this section here, when I'm warping, I'm going to warp 4 plum, okay? And again, my warp was 8.5 because they said that the original warp, I believe, what was it? The original warp basically was 4.5 yards long, and that allowed for 12 inches for take up, 24 inches for loom waist. So again, it depends on whether or not you need more loom waist than that. But they said to add 36-inch warp length for every additional towel. So I wanted to do a double set. So usually I like only to do 5 towels, so I'm going to try and do 8 towels, and it's 2 of each one, so hopefully I don't get too bored doing that. So basically my warp length was 8.5 yards, okay? So when you do your warp, obviously you want to find a guide thread, preferably one that doesn't stretch. That will give you your 8.5, and you tie that on, and you figure out how to, and this is assuming, again, I'm assuming that you know how to use a warping board for just like a single color of warp, okay? So then you put the guide thread onto your warping board, and from there figure out, what's the pattern that you're going to use, okay? So I just did the first one here myself on my warping board, and what I'm going to do is we'll work together doing this one here, my section 3 on my sectional there by warping that one, okay? And in this section here for number 3, I will need 3 stone, 2 gris foncé, 5 jean, and 8 natural in order to do that one, okay? So give me a second. I'm going to set up my warping board, and I will come back. Okay, so let us do section, let me open up to section number, what was it here? 3, okay? So section number 3, I needed to have 3 stone, 2 gris foncé, 5 jeans, and 8 natural, okay? So generally speaking, I've got a video on how to use a warping board, just a regular manual warp, okay? So I would take a look at that. I've got my guide thread. My guide thread is 8.5 yards. You could do it if you have a smaller board. You could do a halfway, half the amount, and then you're going back as the full amount, but you would not cut it at the end like I do, because you'd have to obviously fold it out in order to be able to do your sectional, okay? So down here I have this thing I bought from IKEA. I've got a little video on an IKEA hack here that I ended up buying here. So basically it's for plates actually, and so I ended up buying that, and I put my spools on here, so I've got my different spools. Down here, depending on what thread I need, that works really well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with the natural because that's the largest amount, and I need to have 8 of those. So I'm going to do a slip knot, so around my finger, put the loop through, so then I've got a loop, okay, like that. I show you again, I've got a video on how to do a slip knot. You know it's a slip knot because it comes right out, no problem, okay? So I'm going to do my slip knot, and I'm going to put it on the end there. Now, because I'm using a sectional, I do not need the cross. If you are doing it, obviously for a loom that does not have a sectional, you would need to use your cross. I don't need to do that. So literally, I'm just going to go around, okay? So I've figured out my guide thread of what would be up to here is 8.5, basically following along. So let me see here. We'll go 1, okay? And we'll go back up. All right. Now I'm not going to have you watch the whole thing. My original video obviously goes in a lot more depth. I'm just going to, in order for it to not undo, I just kind of wrap it around a peg there, and I'll go back to it in a moment. So I'm going to do all 8, and then I'm going to show you how I do the changeover with the next color, and then you would just do the exact same thing with all the colors that you happen to need, okay? So let me pause it, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so basically I did my 8. Make sure that you're physically counting to make sure you have the right amount that you need, obviously not counting your guide thread, okay? And you would want your guide thread in a contrast color to make sure that you do not, tie it into your little knots later on. So what I'm going to do basically is I need to switch over to the next color. It doesn't really matter what order I'm doing it. Obviously the order matters when I'm threading it, but as long as it's in the bunch, that's all that matters. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to do that, okay? And then I just tie it at the end. That, you know, it's not really knotted. It's just one, I guess you could say one single knot in a sense. Not so it would easily undo. It's like a slip knot. Okay. So the next color basically doesn't matter again which one I'm going to do. I'm going to do stone. I need 3. So depending on the amount that you need, you're looking at, if it's an even number, you know you're going to finish up here. If it's an uneven number, I'm going to finish at the end point as well. Okay. So if I need stone, my stone. Okay. So I've got my stone. The stone and the gris foncé are very close together in terms of color, so you do want to make sure that you're using the correct one. Okay. You will notice that I put my warping board on my Kallax because I don't have a dedicated space for my actual warping board. Just hold on. Just be careful. I show a video on how I set my stuff up, but I also tape it to make sure that, you know, you've got these clamps on top that it sits on, but I don't want it to slide off, so I tape it as well just to hold it temporarily until I'm done, and then basically it comes off again. So this is number 2. I needed 3, so I got to go down. Okay, one more to the very bottom, and that will be my 3rd one. All right. Oh, sorry. Okay, so then I will cut this one and do a little slip knot. There we go. Okay. And so that's the 2nd color. All right. So then the 3rd color, basically, I will start at the top again. Okay. You don't necessarily have to start from the bottom if you don't want to. So I'm starting from the top. I need 5 jeans. No, hold on. Sorry. I did 3 stones. I need 2 gris foncé. So I'll take my gris foncé. All right. Do my little slip knot. So I only need to go up and down once. Hold on. Make sure you're following your path correctly, because otherwise you're going to find that when you do put it on your sectional, it will be short, and you'll wonder why, because you missed the peg somewhere along the way. Okay? Okay, so that one's done, so I'm going to cut it. All right, so there we go. Cut it here. Okay. And then I'm going to go do my jeans. Okay, now when I'm done my jeans, I should have 18 threads. I'm going to count again to make sure I've got 18 threads. Okay, and my various colors. So again, with the 3 and the 2, I could tell it was 3 and 2. I didn't need to count it again to make sure, because I could see it on the actual warping board. But again, if you want to do that to make sure you've got the correct number, then obviously do that. Okay, there's nothing worse than going to the sectional, trying to thread, and realizing you're missing something. Okay. The last thing I need is the 5 jeans. Okay, so let me do that, and then I'll come back and we'll show you what I do from there. Okay, so I'm done. Just make sure here I've got my 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then basically what I do is, because it's for me it's a longer warp, because my my loom is on the other side of the basement there. So I'm going to just tie it off in approximately 1 yard lengths. Make sure again you get everything but not the guide thread. Okay. I just literally put in 1 knot. There might be other types of knots that easily just pull out easily. I just put a single knot basically, or a single tie, I guess you could say. Let's see here, maybe I'll okay, so I'll do that. Approximately this should be a little bit more than 1 yard. Okay, and then we've got, okay, hold on here. That's that. And again, I usually use a contrasting thread because it makes life so much easier. Okay. And then, there we go. Oh, actually, you know what? One thing I did forget to do is count, do I have my 18? So I'm going to check that. 18, let me just check. 16, 17, 18. So I've got my 18, not a big issue there. Okay. So what I usually do when I'm putting it on the sectional is that this end I actually leave open. Some people will keep it looped. I find that it gets all tangled up, and then I've got stuff different lengths. It's a pain. So what I do is I cut off this end here. I leave the other end. I don't cut it at this end here, okay? Because I'm going to knot it at this end so that it can actually be attached to the sectional. So I'll pull this out. Okay, again, not the guide thread. All right. And then when I pull it out, I'm just going to put my scissors in there, cut it. Okay, so any knots or long lengths or whatever the case happens to be, again, I'm not too worried about that. And then I slowly pull it off, okay, holding it, all right, wherever there's the next knot there, all right, okay, slowly pulling it off to make sure that everything came off, that I didn't get the guide thread by mistake or anything like that, all right. Put that one here. Okay, now I'm going to take this one here. All right, I'm just going to pull everything down. Okay, so I've got my slip knots or whatever. I'm going to tie this in a knot at the very end. And again, I might, you know, if you want to cut the excess stuff, the tails, you're certainly free to do that. That's not a big deal. Okay. All right. So I've got that. I'm going to bring the knot as close to the end as possible so that I'm not losing anything. I'm going to cut these end tails here. There we go. Okay, so that everything's a little bit neater and tidier. So what I'm going to do is I want to chain this. Now you could, depending on how stable your setup is for the warping board, you could chain it right off of the actual warping board. I tend to have a little doohickey from IKEA that I use in order to chain it when it's pretty long. So I'm just going to turn stuff over there so you can see me do it there quickly in case that works for you. And then I bring stuff over obviously to my loom, and then I do the warping manually for the sectional on my loom. Okay, give me a second here. Okay, so basically I use this, got this from IKEA here. It's, I think, for hanging clothes. I've got some chip clips that I got from IKEA as well. You can get that from anywhere. Again, if you want to know, check my channel for IKEA hacks, basically, in weaving. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the end, okay, I'm going to wrap it around my wrist, okay? So I've got it like, basically like this, okay? So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually grab the end and I want to pull it through, okay? So again, I've gone through another video for the warp chain, okay? So I'm just going to pull this through like that. Now I'm going to secure the end here. I'm just going to make it like kind of a little bit tighter, okay? Put my hand through it. All I'm doing is like a crochet, crochet stitch in a sense. I'm just pulling it through and it will undo itself easily. So I'm just do this. And I'm going to keep going until, all right? Again, the video goes through this process a lot slower than I'm showing you right now. Okay. And again, some of you may already know some of these steps, have your own way of doing stuff. Again, my way is not necessarily the only way to do it. It's just something I've been self-taught for the most part for weaving, so I've come up with my own ideas as time goes on. Okay. And so what I do here is that I don't want, if I let go, everything will undo itself. So what I do is I take a chip clip and I clip the main one here, okay, which is this one, and then one of the loops, all right? I do that, cool. So that way I can let it go. This is particularly long. I got cats which would love to chew on this, and so I'm gonna just hook it on another hook right there. And so basically it's ready for me to use, okay? And then I just come, basically, I take the whole thing. I'm lucky because I've got my Fanny loom back there, the Leclerc family loom. And I literally, this hooks right onto that top bar there, and I can just sit there and then take one at a time as I need, okay? And then manually put it onto my actual loom, which again, I got a video on showing you how to do it manually if you don't have a tension box and stuff like that. You don't necessarily need a tension box to manually warp your sectional. It does take longer, but again, I enjoy all the steps for warping and stuff, so for me it's not a big deal.
Okay, so now let's take a look at doing a multi-colored warp using a tension box. Okay, so still doing my Prairie Bloom towels. I ended up basically doing a graph, which of course doesn't fit on all one page for you guys to see it big enough. So I had 4 colors. What I ended up doing basically, okay, can you see that? Yes, you can. Okay, so basically I looked at, for section 2, 3, 4, 18, 19, and 20 were the ones that had multicolors. Okay, so the other ones were all straight natural. I wound my spools, I put it onto the actual spool rack, I used a tension box, I put it onto my sectional. Okay, and I would have done that first because I don't have anywhere near enough spools to be able to do all of this, including this. You could, depending on how big your spool rack is, because mine's fairly small, you could have all your all your naturals, for example, this added in to the original naturals on top of that, so that, you know, you would add that in at the beginning, and then these ones would be extra on top of that, right? Because you would have, as I said, you would have had, hold on, if it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we had 21 sections, so 15 sections basically were natural, okay? So again, I could have, you know, added this part in, okay, to that, but I didn't because my brain would start to fall apart, okay? And I chickened out. I did do the tension box. I did do the warp, as you know, on the warping board because this was just flying my mind. So what I did is that I literally looked at, so if you go back to, whoops, hold on a sec here, to my little simplification there of my pattern, okay, where I literally took every section and I laid it out. So what I did basically is I took for section 2, how many natural did I need? I needed 9. For section 3, I needed to have 8. And then I went through all for the naturals for one section. And that meant that I would need a total of 15 spools to do these 6 sections with the natural on it. Spool 1 would have 51, etc. This one would have 34, and so on and so forth. Okay? Then I went back and I did the second color, which was plum. So section 2 basically needed plum in, section 2 needed 4 plums, okay, so 4 spools of plum. These sections didn't have any plum, and then section 20 basically also had 4 plums, okay. So when I add those together, each spool for the 4 spools of plum would need 17 yards each, okay. Go on to gris foncé, again sections 2, 3, 19, and 20 each had 2 sections. 2 spools that had gris foncé, and again, because each yard, my warp was 8.5 yards, each of them had to have 8.5 yards, again, for a total of 34 yards on each spool, okay? So far I've got 15, 19, 20, 21 spools that I need to use, okay? Then I go on to the last 2 colors, which were stone and jeans, and I do the exact same thing. So in jeans, when I go through each section, section 2 and 3 had 3 spools of stone, section 19 had 4, section 20 had 2, okay? And basically as I'm looking through, as like, you know, when I'm threading it, I need to have one thread, you know, for section 2 that goes through, that's natural, one that's, you know, plum, one that's natural, one that's plum, and they're each going to be the length of the warp, so you just kind of add it up that way, okay? And then obviously for jeans, section 2 had nothing, section 3, 4, 18, 19 had, you know, a certain amount needed, okay? And then 20 needed nothing, and then again, I just added that up. So in total, I would need, to do just the colored warp sections, I would need 15, 19, 21, 21, I would need 30 spools. Now my spool rack, if I recall, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I have 48 spools on my spool rack, so I could actually do that. I might even possibly have been able to add in, actually all the naturals and do that in one shot, but my brain just, it started to, you know, fall out of my ears there. So again, that is a way of doing it, literally going through, and as I said, I'm putting all the numbers, and then I just put all, you know, the naturals together, right? And so as I said, like when we do the, I'm going to show you my thought process, because it took me a while to wrap my brain around this, okay, to show you my thought process. So again, I put the number of spools, okay, I put 18 for each section to start with until I found out how many I needed, and then I just deleted the amount after that. So again, section 2, as I said, needed 9, section 3 needed 8, and so on and so forth. So if you're looking at spool number 1, it's going to have 8.5 yards plus 8.5 yards plus, and that gets me this, okay? And so anything obviously that's blank, you don't count, and that's how I ended up with the totals there, okay? Again, this one myself, I would not have done this. It would have taken me more time to wind the spools and put them onto into the tension box, because of course, like once I've done, you know, now when I go back and I do section 2, for example, and I need to have 4 plum, 9 natural, 2 gris foncé, and 3 stone, okay, I need to put those all into the actual, the reed into my tension box, do that one, you know, warp it around, okay, so that it's 8.5. Then I have to pull all of those out, restring the next set that I would need in there, and then wind it around and so forth. So to me, it was going to take just as much time as me winding 6 on an actual warping board, right? So, but if you have, you know, a lot of different sections to do, it might make sense for you to do that and just to, you know, pull them out and put them back in. If somebody has like a bit of a shortcut to this, I would love to know it, because yeah, I do enjoy using the tension box. It is very quick, you know, in terms of you know, putting the yardage on the spools and then just kind of winding them off onto each section. But it seems to me, it seems pretty complicated to do a multi-warp using a tension box on a sectional. So again, it can be done, but you need to make sure you've got your math right so that you don't end up short at the end. All right, so I hope that helps, and have yourself a great day.